Well, ETR Nation, I am really glad you're here today. It is a hot day. It's 90 degrees. So what I've done, I've arranged for you guys to knock off early, and we're going to do some in-service training. You can log this in your continuing education book, particularly appropriate for maintenance away guys and operations guys. But I got something for you accountants and you business guys. At the end of the video, I'm going to kind of share a little bit with you about what's going on the railroad and the direction that I'm thinking about pursuing. So something for everybody today. In-service training, we're going to start immediately. So I'm sitting on the old track cart, and we're going to use this today in our demonstration. So the ETR Nation wraps around the globe, and I know for some of you, English isn't your first language. And I understand English is a hard language to learn because we've got words that mean two different things. Here's an example. You can go to Harbor Freight and buy a welder, or you can put an ad in the paper or go to the union hall and hire a welder. Well, in one case, the welder is a person. In the other case, it's a machine. So what we're going to do today, we're going to take a look at a couple items. Their names sound a lot alike, but they're very different. It's a ReRail and a Derail. Well, I might say to Graham, that was a particularly nasty derail. And I would mean an event. But what we're going to look at today here on the East Terminal Railway is an item that's called a derail. And I've got one right here. So let's kind of zoom in on this and we'll get a look at it. This is a derail built by Hayes. It's an EB model, size 6, and it's a right hand. So you've got to read that. You've got to understand how you're going to mount it. We're going to mount it on the rail right here, show you how a derail works. Now, the other item that sounds a lot like that is a ReRail or a ReRailer. And the most famous one of all probably is Burlington. Alden built them, but here we've got a couple Burlington ReRailers. So what we're going to do for our in-service training today, we're going to derail this cart with a derail and then ReRail this cart with the ReRailers. And this is done on this cart because it's easy. Because it's easy, that's why. Because these are both made for freight cars, fully loaded freight cars and locomotives. This is not toys we're playing with, but we're demonstrating it this way because it's a lot easier, takes a lot less labor, is a lot safer. Speaking of safer, we do have the ETR safety cone. We have waters. Stay hydrated today. We'll be wearing gloves because these items are heavy and you have to move them around. Got blue rags, so I don't have to call makeup in. So let's get started. Glad you're here today. Let's learn something. In-service training. Okay, so I do have the derail now mounted. We're not going to spike it down. This unit has to be spiked down or it's just not as effective. It would slide when the car hit it. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So this is not spiked down, but I did want to say, some of you might be thinking, why would you want to derail a car? Well, this is used to protect workers mostly. What this does is if a car gets away and is going to roll out of a factory down onto the main line, that'd be a serious problem and possibly a really bad derailment. So you put the car on the ground while it's moving slow and while it's not near the main line. Now, the reason we have one, there's a hill coming down into Death Valley, and what we need is something to protect us from cars that would get away on that hill and come down in. And a rolling car is deadly. It's silent and it will crush you. So this will protect us when we're down in here working if a car got away on the hill. Now, there is a cool item called a torpedo, which is about the size of a shotgun shell, which you lay on the rail. When a car rolls off of that, it goes off like a big firecracker and would tell you that a car was rolling toward you. This, you won't know till you hear the car go on the ground. then you've got a problem. So here's what the derailer looks like. This is a flop over, a flip. So right now it's in the position where it would derail a car, but you simply take it, and I should have my glove on, I agree, and flop it over. There a car can pass by it. When it's spiked in, this part is under the rail head. It's spiked down. It's got cleats that go between the ties, so it can't move. When you want to secure the tracks, we're going to flip this over onto the rail. Flop. And that was loud. So now it's in place. We're protected from items rolling down the hill. So what we're going to do next, we're going to put that poor cart right on the ground. As I get closer, I'll explain to you how it works. Well, now you can see exactly what's going to happen. What holds a rail car on the rail are the flanges. On that side, and unfortunately it's in a shadow, but the flange on the inside of the rail head is what keeps the car on the tracks. And on this side, same thing. But what we're going to do, we're going to lift that wheel up, disengage the flange from the inside of the rail head. It will no longer be on the inside. It'll be up in the air. Then with this part of the derailer, we're going to guide the flange off. Now right about here, what's happening over on that side? That wheel's moving this way. It's going to go on the ground probably slightly before this side. This side will be up here, and then this, see how this is beveled? This is all designed to put the car on the ground right about here. Now I've seen cars that have gone through a derail. In fact, I'll show you pictures and solutions to when that happens. But sometimes it's just one axle, sometimes it's both axles. Of course, depending upon how fast the car is rolling. So what we're going to use today in place of gravity or a locomotive is the Cat 31.5. It'll be our motive power. So I'm going to hook the chain up, set the camera up. We're going to watch a derailment live. Not of a full-size freight car, but of an axle. When one flange is disengaged from the inside of the rail, the other follows, and then it goes on the ground. Stand by. Okay, now I'll be operating the Cat, and there'll be some noise, but hopefully my microphone is working and you're going to be able to see what happens. I'll be able to narrate it. It's up on. If it stopped right there, we would have avoided a derailment. A little bit further, now I should be, there we go, that'll correct that problem. I was pulling it at a weird angle. If you look across, right now the other wheel is still fully engaged, it's on the rail head, everything's fine. But now, on our wheel that's on the derailer, what's going to happen? It's going to hit right there. That starts shoving things to the outside. See it happening? There it goes. Now look across to the other wheel. It's starting to come off. Now as soon as that pops off, this rodeo, oh look at that. So look at the other wheel. It's just about off. The derailer on this side has shoved that flange up and over the rail head, and now for its finishing touch, it drops it off the side. This is a derailer doing what a derailer does. Derailment. ETR switch crew to ETR dispatch. Yes, sir. There's been a car roll through the derailer. It is now on the ground. Can you send the guys with the ReRailers? Yes. hit the derail, but now we need to ReRail. Yep, they're the Burlington ones. Yellow. Make sure you bring the 2 anchors that go with them. And yep, we'll pull it back up on. Do not call Halter or Corman. We got this. We have ReRailers. We have skills. Well, what you're looking at is a derailed car. Now, if this were the truck on one end of a railroad car, it was just the leading axle. It did its job. It stopped it from rolling down on work crews. But we're now going to use these items. These items, the ReRailers, are interesting in that there's 2 different ones. Did I bring 2 from a different set? What's going on here? Well, this says inside. This says outside. So this one right here is going to go on the inside of that rail. This one's going to go on the outside of this rail. And really, essentially, we're again using an inclined plane with guidance for the flanges to ReRail this car. So the derail did its job. Let's see if the ReRailers can do their job. So after a derail does its job, there's a lot of finger pointing, people wondering whose fault and why and how, but then you have to put it back on. And I've got some pictures here to show you of times we've put equipment back on that's hit a derail. It's I don't know how many times we've gone and done that, but it's so many that I don't know the number. But here's one of a locomotive that hit a derail. It only derailed 1 axle, and from there they tried to get it on, and that's generally hard on the ties and the tie plates and the track structure, but they eventually had to have us come in. Now, what was interesting about this one, it was right by this big embankment, so we had to use our knuckle boom crane to lift our lifting equipment up there. They could have brought in side booms, but it was right beside the main line. It was right on that very steep grade. A big crane would have had to be mammoth to get set up down below and reach up high. So this is one of many we've been on. Here's a couple pictures of how we solved it. Okay, so I have the ReRailers in place. Now, I put them in wrong. I put that one over there and that one over there. They're very different and they do a very different job, hopefully at the exact same time. But I had to switch them. So this one here catches the flange out here and takes this wheel up so high that when it goes over, your goal is for the flange to end up here. This one is much lower because all it has to do is catch that flange and deliver it here beside the railhead in that gap right there. Now, these have notches so you can spike them down. If this thing slides, it doesn't work very well. And when you've got a loaded car and it slides, it's very frustrating. Look at the grooves in this where cars have been up on here. There the paint's off where we've used it since we painted it. But the flangeway went up here and then down in. That was exactly, these are the marks of a successful ReRail using a ReRailer. Now, how you hold these in place, and I'm not going to do it here today because I want to get you guys home to your families. This item right here hooks the rail and then sticks out this hole right here. I wonder if I could simulate that upside down. Close. So when that sticks out like that, you take this wedge and put it in there, and that keeps this thing from sliding. So I'm not going to dig all this out. That's some good old-fashioned Maddox work right there, where you got to get in there, dig that out, put that big hook in there to hold that. So we are going to set the camera back up. I'm going to be pulling with the Caterpillar, and we'll see if we can get this to go right back up on. Now, I say, and some of you may argue with me, you're always better off pulling this axle up on. If you try pushing, it's almost like a two-wheeled cart. If you push it, every bump you hit is bigger. If you pull it, it goes up and over. So pulling is better. If you're lifting, it's even better. But even a straight line pull, I think, brings cars up on better. So we're going to see what happens here. This is a simulation. Should go well. Should give you an idea what a Burlington ReRailer does. Now, the derail is still down in there. Oh, that'd be something. And yes, I've seen this. It's under there. You've got to get underneath there and flip it before you pull the next car through, or you'll then put the back one on the ground. And that, there are names for that. That is very difficult. The leading axle is always easier to ReRail. So I'm gonna set the camera up. Let's see if it works. I want to get you guys home to your family. We are in a shade spot now, which I like. Maybe not so good for camera work, but here we go. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this is successful. Well, there you go. That's how those are used. Now, was that super smooth? No, it really wasn't. But these things almost never are. If they're not spiked down well, if they move, there's a number of things that can go wrong. And by the way, speaking of going wrong, look at that. We almost went back up and over the derail. So when that's under the center, under the bolster of a car, that's very difficult to deal with. So we're back on. That's the end of the training. You now have a pretty good idea of how to use these and what they're for, how to lock them in. Now I gotta say a huge shout out to the old timers that always did this with wood blocking. And some of them will be in the comments saying how quick and how easy. The problem is that's almost a lost skill, a lost art. And railroads don't want you doing that. They don't want their employees really probably even doing this, but putting out wood and tie plates and running up on them and running back and forth, it's just not the way railroading is done anymore. But the old timers, boy, they could throw down some oak and have a car back up on really quick. I've heard those stories so many times, but they've retired and they didn't maybe get a chance to teach it to anyone. So that's the end of the Derail ReRail. They sound a lot alike, but they're quite different. Thank you so much. Now, as promised, I'm going to get in a different position and talk to you a little bit about the railroad here. As it turns out, insurance is one of our big problems. it looks to me like the same amount of insurance whether you store 2 cars or 200 cars. So with the amount of cars that we could store, I'm not sure you can cover it with insurance. So car storage, if some of you guys are knowledgeable on insurance, particularly railroad insurance, let me know, because that's a huge problem. Now the other, we did have an inquiry on the bakery. Somebody has asked, but they haven't followed back up yet. It was like a preliminary inquiry, and maybe in 6 months they'll come at us like gangbusters, but right now it's kind of quieted down while maybe they do some other investigation. Something I've thought about lately is a bulk product that we could unload ourselves here. And when I think of a bulk product, I'm thinking shingles. Shingles that are the roofing material, because they're bulk, they unload fairly easily, they can be stored outside. So we could be the unload and storage yard for multiple places that sell shingles. Easy to unload, takes 2 fork trucks. We even, well, take 1 fork truck if you have a loading dock. If you don't have a loading dock, these are pictures of Graham and I. This is Graham loading a fork truck inside of a railroad car. So we moved all these racks out of one car and put them in another. And to do that, the small fork truck brought the stuff to the door. The big fork truck carried it down to the next railroad car. But and what I liked about that job, can you see the car numbers? GTW, which were Graham's initials, and it was our first transload job. So he was there, his car number, initials, all the same. Great job. But that's how we could unload shingles even without an unloading dock. And then we take the bulldozer and clean this area up right here, gravel it, and store the shingles until the people called for them. So put in the comments what you think of that. If you know about roofing materials and how that industry works, let me know. So we're done here for today. Drive carefully on the way home. Remember to log your hours. And as always, I'm so thankful for you guys. Don't say it often. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. If you like orange and you like a cool shirt, they are at railroadmerch.com. That's where we sell our gear. Mostly orange t-shirts, some mouse pads, some cups, some mugs. But it's the orange t-shirt that people really like. Thank you so much. I really appreciate each and every one of you.